Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to the third week of Mastermind Academy. Just getting set up here a little bit. As usual, roll call. Let me see who's on today. I'd love to know who's tuning in, where you're from. Hey, Bedwards89. Hey, from Omaha, Nebraska. Wow, pretty far from here. I'm out of Baltimore, if you didn't know. Let me just get... I had to figure out some of my Twitch settings. I have a little Stream Deck thing that'll move my windows around and let me change scenes pretty easily. And tonight, we're not only going to be working off of the Virtualbox that I have, the virtual machine that I usually use. So I had to get that set up. So it's been a little bit weird. Hey, from Boston, Gettysburg, PA, Silicon Prairie, Kentucky, Maryland, Toronto, Canada in the house. Welcome to the stream. As usual, we usually give the first, 5 or so minutes for people to get logged on, get settled in. We don't want to hop into it. I know you came from work. I know you probably just ate dinner with the family. So we'll give you the first few minutes to kind of get settled. I'm also getting settled, sit back, relax, get comfortable. 2 hours is a little bit of a long time. Most streams are 2 hours. Tonight's should be right around 2 hours. I know that's a long time to be looking at stuff like this. So we're gonna try to keep it fun, try to keep it light. And we're gonna try to get through all of the content. Richmond in the house. Richmond seems to be here every week. Welcome back to the stream. Make sure I got everything set up here. All right, there we go. I wanted my mouse to be stuck inside of my Virtualbox, so I can't, I've got a couple monitors, and I don't want my mouse flying all over the place. I kind of want to contain it into the virtual machine. This, for some reason, my Virtualbox settings don't keep after I change it once. So maybe once we get through this, maybe someone can give me some advice on how to get that to be permanent. What's up, Terry Brown? Baltimore in the house. Welcome to the stream. Let me get a sip of water. As you guys know, I switched over to the water bottle, to the thing that's made for water rather than the big medieval times glass that I was using. It was a little bit took up too much space on the desk. So I'm also a huge fan of cold water, and this keeps it cold throughout the stream. I hate when my ice melts, and then I got a lot of room temperature water that I got to drink. It's pretty nasty to me. I don't really like room temperature water. Hey, Legendary Ops. Oh, Be More Black Techie, shout out. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I help run, not so much anymore just because I'm running out of time, but a tech meetup in Baltimore called Baltimore Black Techies, designed to help people of color, get introduced to tech, designed to get people of color, really up to speed in tech and get jobs in tech. So we meet every Thursday here in Baltimore. If anyone's interested, check out meetup.com. If you are in Baltimore, there's a surprising amount of meetups running in Baltimore. I'm from the DC area, and I was used to meetups down there. I was used to the giant meetup scene that's down there, but Baltimore has a lot of tech meetups, and I'm sure if you check in your area, you've got some cool meetups as well that you should go to, but don't be afraid to go to them. Just go in there, search for something you like, see, look through the list, make sure it's, heavily attended, or not even heavily attended, but make sure people are actually going to be showing up that week. Visit, make some friends, make some good connections, and you can really create opportunities for yourself by doing that. But cool, it's 8:05, it's 8:04. We're gonna go ahead and get started because part of this class is going to be actually getting Linux installed, and that may be a little bit time consuming, but we should be able to move through everything else pretty quick. So we'll get going now. So week 3. So last week we went through basics of programming and introduction to programming concepts using Golang. We did that for 2 weeks. So that was all of last week. Previous to that, we kind of talked about what we're going to be doing throughout this course. I'll be referencing that curriculum pretty often, and I'll actually hop into that now. But tonight, we're into the operating systems management piece, and we are on the Linux part 1. So actually, before we hop straight into that, let's go check out the curriculum. Academy.mastermind.io will give you the curriculum, and we are up to So we did the whole, these are the section headings. These are the big concepts, the big topics that we're gonna be covering. And so we've already covered learning a programming language, and hopefully you're still running through things with that. And now we're on to operating systems, concepts, and server management. So you learn how to code a little bit. When someone develops that code and need to run that code, it needs to be put out on a server, and a system needs to be able to process that and serve it out to everyone who wants to see it. So tonight we're gonna be going over that. Specifically with Linux. We'll talk about why we're using Linux and why Linux is important. And we'll also take a look at roadmap.sh to show you the roadmap we're following. So we're following a modified version of this roadmap. We did do programming languages first, but the rest of this is going to be kind of out of order. We are on OS concepts, but we're diving a little deeper. We're kind of in the number 3 part right now, but we'll kind of move throughout the next 2 sections. We'll do 2 and 3, but check out roadmap.sh if you need it. If you kind of want to see the path that we're kind of following, and just show some tools and things. So yeah, so we're learning the programming language. We chose Go for that. And for managing servers and different OS concepts, we're going to be using Linux, and they put Linux up top because this is the best one to learn for this. And you're going to learn here how to live in the terminal. You're going to learn how to serve applications over the internet. You're going to learn a little bit about how the internet works, a little bit of networking. So there's going to be a lot packed in here. This is a 4-parter. So this will last all of this week and all of next week. 4 streams total. And actually I think it's only 3 streams. Let me go back to that. I may be thinking of the AWS piece. Okay, so it's only 3 streams. So it's this week, next week, and on Labor Day. If you can make it out on Labor Day, we'll be putting it all together, and we'll be doing a lab, and we'll combine a little bit of what we learned over the last week with programming. We'll apply some of those concepts, and we'll apply a lot of the stuff that we're going to learn in the next 2 classes with the introduction to Linux, and we're going to start scripting things together. All right, cool. Let's hop into it now. Let's hop back into the slides. I think I'm sharing them here. All right. If anyone doesn't know, Tux is this little guy on the right side. He's a penguin. This is the official mascot of Linux. I don't really know why his name is Tux. I don't know why it is a penguin, but if you see a penguin, you should be thinking Linux. But what is Linux? Linux is a free and open source operating system. So free and open source means that the source code for it is readily available, and anyone can see it, anyone can contribute to it. So we learned about GitHub last class. I'll be able to show you a little bit later how you can kind of go in and contribute to the Linux kernel if you want to. It'll probably take you a while to be ready to do something like that. Most people aren't going to want to do something like this, but you can contribute to it. It is community driven, and there are a lot of contributors to the Linux kernel. Free and open source also means that you can use it for free, and you can build different your own operating system out of it. You can build your own distributions. We'll talk about what distributions are in a little bit, but it's also a Unix-like operating system. So you can't say it is a Unix operating system because of some I guess licensing problems. I think Unix was built by like Bell Systems, which is Bell Atlantic, like a long time ago. And Linux is an open source version of it, and it is a Unix-like operating system. You have to say Unix-like operating system. It's not really important right now that you know what Unix is. Mac is also a Unix-like operating system. Mac is built off of Unix, so it's very Linux-esque. Anyone using a Mac right now, once we hop into some of this stuff, you'll be like, this seems very similar to what I have. So actually, if you're on a Mac, you don't need to install Linux. How we're doing here. Windows, you don't either. I'm going to try to show you both, but we're also going to run through how to install Linux kind of in a virtual machine, which you can also apply to installing locally to your computer if you'd like. It was created by a guy named Linus Torvalds. This is the same guy who created Git. We talked about Linus Torvalds last time, but he's the one who initially created this, and it's grown ever since. He's an interesting guy. You should watch some YouTube videos on him. He's super smart, but he's the person who's created it. And Linux is just a kernel. You'll understand a little bit more about what that means later, but Linux is not really a full operating system by itself. What it really is a kernel. This is a piece of software that interacts between your hardware, and kind of like it interacts with it allows your hardware to be able to interact with kind of the apps and the tools that you want to use. So it's this kind of like middle thing that makes these connections and is able to talk to both of them, so that you can actually run these applications and use your keyboard and use the mouse that you like. that's what it's for. So it's getting pretty large actually, but it's pretty cool the things that it can do. Before we talk about distributions, we'll talk about why we're going to learn Linux as opposed to Mac or Windows servers. Linux by a substantial margin holds the biggest market share for serving content, for servers, for serving content. It is almost impossible that you go a single day in your digital life, without interacting with a Linux server. If you're on Android is built upon Linux. Almost, again, like I said, it's very, very likely, I would bet a lot of money that the servers that are serving up this video to you on Twitch, also Linux servers. Every company you can think of most likely runs Linux servers, and probably a lot of them. So this is the technology to learn. This is the operating system that you want to learn whenever you are on Stack Overflow or trying to get answers to coding problems or technology questions. All the commands basically are going to be Linux, Unix commands. So you need to kind of understand what this stuff is so you can more easily move through this stuff. And so that's why we're going to be using Linux. So distribution. So I told you that Linux is just a kernel, but we said this was an entire operating system. So this is where, because it's free and open source, there are these things called distributions, and there are a lot of them. And distributions are basically different packaged up pieces of applications that kind of exist with the Linux kernel. So basically you take the Linux kernel and you plug in a bunch of apps that you like on top of it, applications and tools, and you bundle them together and you provide it to people. You provide that image to people, and that essentially becomes your operating system. You can customize it how you like. And there are a lot of people who do many opinionated things with their operating systems. There are certain tools that they must have or that they would like to exclude. And that's why you get all of these different distributions here. So this is by far not the exhaustive list of distributions. There are way too many Linux distributions, and we'll see another slide, I think, next on that. But this is some of the common ones. Some of the common ones you probably heard of already. And if not, that you should be looking out for is Ubuntu or Ubuntu. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Red Hat or Centos, which is basically there's the company Red Hat. And they've taken Linux and they basically provide a commercialized platform for it. They offer support. Basically, you pay for the support and you get the operating system for free. But they generally run a lot of server-based. It's a server-based distribution. They do have a desktop version. Some people use it. I don't see people use it a lot. But there are a lot of other ones on here. Centos is the open source version. So Red Hat and Centos, when you see those, they're basically the same thing. Arch Linux is a cool one. Linux Mint, Debian, and a lot of them are families of each other. So basically, like Fedora is based on Red Hat, and Ubuntu is based upon Debian, and it gets super complicated. It takes a while to learn all of it. You don't really need to know all the relationships, but I've been in it for a while, so I know most of the relationships here. And this is a relationship chart of kind of how these distributions have broken down. Maybe I will try to send this in the chat in a little bit. But basically, all it's showing here is, I know you can't see this, I know it's really small here, but it says Debian, and these are all the things that kind of branch off of Debian. And down here, we've got Red Hat. Those are kind of the two main tracks that I would worry about, Debian and Red Hat, and all the things that have branched off of them. And you can see these are kind of the biggest branches, and there's a bunch of distributions in here. And again, this is not even the exhaustive list of distributions. There are many, many more, again, because free and open source, anyone can make a distribution. And that's not that important either. Just understanding that the difference between Debian and Red Hat are just that they are different Linux distributions, and that they, come with different packages installed. They have different ideas about how they want you to do things, and then different tools that they provide to you out of the box. Cool. So we're gonna get right past that, and we're gonna head straight into virtualization. Virtualization is an important topic for a lot of reasons. You can see I got the guy over here, messing around with his virtual reality setup there. I don't know if that's the what are the two that are out there now? There's the Vive, and I don't know if the other one is the Oculus. I just one of those. But virtualization has been around for a while. It's not really the same thing, but virtualization has been around for a long time. And it's kind of like OS, operating system inception. This is an operating system basically inside of another operating system. So it's a box in a box. It's kind of like those little Russian dolls, and you open up one and you got another one inside. But that's basically what virtualization is. It is running a virtual computer. You know, you have your real computer. I've got a giant desktop sitting here on my desk. It's like running a virtual computer inside of your actual hardware computer. And it doesn't have to be just one. It can be hundreds, you know, depending on how much RAM and how much CPU your computer has. You can have as many as can fit inside of there, and we're gonna kind of see that in action as well. But again, it's kind of like operating system inception. It's running an operating system inside of another operating system, or inside of another computer. Maybe not inside of another operating system, but we'll get to that on hypervisor. So they run via a piece of software called a hypervisor. There are two types of hypervisors, and all a hypervisor is a piece of software that allows you to virtualize another operating system. It's a piece of software that allows you to carve out, to take a computer and its resources, and to carve out a set of resources inside of what you have available to you, and allow you to be able to install an operating system inside of that. You have two types here. One is bare metal. So bare metal just means I run this hypervisor directly on my hardware. So I have my computer set up here. Instead of installing an operating system, I install this hypervisor, which is essentially an operating system, but I install this hypervisor, which allows me to run and set up other operating systems inside. No problem, pretty basic. It's kind of what you probably envisioned when we started talking about this. The second type is a hosted hypervisor. So that is what I'm actually using. So I'm actually using my computer over here has a lot of resources. I installed Windows on it. Windows is an operating system. It is not a hypervisor. And then inside of Windows, as I'm running Windows, then I installed a program that is essentially a hypervisor. I use one called Virtualbox. There are a few others. There's VMware Player, but I installed that. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to virtualize other operating systems as if they were just other applications. So this virtualized operating system is just running in a window, just like a browser would, or a game would, or anything else would on your computer. So so there's two different types there. The bare metal one is a little more efficient, or a lot more efficient really, because you don't have this underlying operating system. You take away some of that overhead. And hosted, is usually better for personal things, personal projects, or if you're not using a giant server or something like that, hosted one might be a little bit better. You need to use that machine for other things. That might be another solution. It takes some practice to kind of figure out when's the right time to use each one. But they're both good. Usually in a job setting, and I think that's what you guys care about the most. In a job setting, you're probably going to be dealing with the bare metal. So these are things like if you ever do a job search for DevOps or systems administrator or site reliability engineer, you might see something that says like VMware, like ESXi or something like that. And these are that's probably the biggest one that you probably have to worry about. There's Zen, there's a few others, but those are hypervisors basically that run on the bare metal. And then there are things like VMware Player, and there are things like Virtualbox that are hosted VMs. Take some time. I do think it's a good idea to kind of read up on the difference between those and kind of know which one's which. I think questions do come up in interviews kind of about those things sometimes, depending on where your specialty is kind of in the DevOps field. Maybe not so much. I don't get asked about hypervisors too often. I don't deal with much virtualization kind of in my face. It's definitely happening. I'm using servers that are virtualized all day, but I'm not necessarily having to worry about those things currently in my position. So I don't always have to worry about it, but it is something that is good to know. So once you get your hypervisor installed and you go ahead and install an operating system on that hypervisor, you now have a virtual machine. Pretty simple. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is a true virtual machine. It's a virtualized machine. So just like you have, again, that computer on your desk or your laptop, now you have a virtual instance of it, something that is representative of that and can operate in the same way, but is not an actual tangible item. And the last thing I throw in here as a bonus is containers. Containers are a type of virtualization. We will talk all about containers in a few weeks, but you will see a lot of questions, especially there's a lot of interview questions about the differences between virtual machines and containers. I do want you to know that containers are a type of virtualization, not quite in the same way that these are, but do think about them in the same vein, but they have a lot of differences, and we'll talk about those when we get to the container portion. But I did want to throw that in this slide. So let me check out some of the chat before we move on. Got the link to the Slack channel. I got from IT Professional. Learn Linux and Python. Absolutely. I think that's a great first two steps, and that's what we've done. Coding first. We did a programming course first. We didn't do Python, but absolutely, I recommend learning Python, learning Linux. That's kind of the base. Linux, at least, is the base of a lot. Python, especially if you want to do DevOps, is an excellent language to learn, and it'll, teach you to be able to move into other programming languages pretty easy if you need to, but that's definitely a great first step, learning Linux and Python. Cool. Yeah, meetup.com is great. I go to a lot of meetups. Oh, side note, this is something that people, over on the West Coast do because, it's so expensive out there, but most meetups serve food. So a lot of people, you can get your whole week's worth of meals by visiting meetups. Most of them are right when you get off of work. So you stop by a meetup at 6:30, eat free food, basically, meet a few people, head home. You don't have to stay the whole time. You don't have to feel obligated. But if you're looking for a decent dinner, head over to a meetup on meetup.com. You can absolutely get free food from that. Hazy Mist, absolutely. You can use WSL for this. So for anyone who doesn't know, WSL is the Windows subsystem for Linux. Windows actually has come around to Linux and loves Linux now. Apparently they love Linux. It used to be a competitor of theirs. It absolutely is a competitor of theirs, but they've come around and understood the high demand of it, the importance of it, and so now you have a running Windows kernel. Well, actually, I don't think you have it yet, but there's a virtualized Linux kernel that they give you kind of right out of the box. Officially, it's supported, and I'll show you guys how to use that if you're on Windows. So you can absolutely use Windows Subsystem for Linux for this. What can we read, watch further to studying between videos? I've been awful about posting the links. I have a whole list of resources. I've been so busy. I'm gonna start taking the hour after the stream to make sure I update in the Slack channel the resources that we can use, that you can use to further get more information. There's also Google Classroom. I ran into some issues with sharing that with a ton of people, so a few people have already accepted it, and I think I'm already at the max. It didn't say that in the official start, but I'm talking with Google now to figure out how to add in more people to that. So I'll give you more updates on that once I get more information on that. But definitely head over to the Slack. I know I keep saying it. I know there's not been much activity from me there. I will absolutely start getting you guys some resources to read in between each of these videos. Yeah, don't buy groceries again. Head to the meetups. You really don't need to buy any groceries. Ooh, what would you recommend for a good beginner laptop for coding and programming? To be 100% honest with you, I think there are two routes here. If your main goal is just to get up to speed as fast as possible with programming, that's what you care about, I would grab some type of MacBook. Grab an older MacBook. They are expensive, but because they are Linux and Unix based, and most programming tools and all this technology is built to run on those things, it's a little bit easier to install than it is on Windows. And so I would generally go with that. You can follow documentation a little bit easier. But if you want to learn a lot about all of it, and you're trying to do DevOps, and you're trying to learn more than just pure programming, honestly, I recommend grabbing a ThinkPad, like $500 from somewhere. Craigslist, eBay, grab a $500 ThinkPad. We're going to talk about installing Linux tonight. Install Linux on it, and go that route. You'll learn a lot just from having it on there. You'll learn a lot just from getting in there and getting your hands dirty with some of that stuff. So that's what I would recommend. Yeah, I will make sure, Hazy Miss, I will make sure I get on this Slack channel and I start pushing some of that interactivity, some of the talk there. Again, I think it'll help when I'm posting the links, and I'll make sure to get to that today. But cool, we talked a little bit about virtualization. This is just a little infographic on the two types of virtualization. Maybe this helps. I know that in the beginning, these types of these visualizations did not help me a lot. They make sense to me now, but maybe they'll make sense to you. This is the bare metal one. So basically we have the hardware, which is essentially your computer. You install the hypervisor directly onto it, and then you install a bunch of operating systems on the hypervisor. So this might be Mac, this might be Windows, this might be Linux. They can all be Linux, they can all be Windows, whatever you like. And there's a type 2. This is the type that I'm running locally here. I have my computer. My host OS that I have installed on here is Windows 10. I got Windows 10 installed. The hypervisor that I'm running, I've installed Virtualbox, and you're looking at Virtualbox right now. And then in that hypervisor, you install more guest OSs. So again, this is a little more efficient. Type 1 for most companies, for for things that are serving lots of data. Type 1 is usually what you're going to see, and Type 2 is usually for projects and people working on specific things. But that's just a little infographic to show you the difference there. Yes, I said ThinkPad. I do still think ThinkPads are great, but Dell's come a long way. Dell actually sells Linux laptops now. They officially support them. There's a whole section, I think it's called Project Sputnik, and now they call them Developer Edition laptops. But you can get some of their laptops with Linux already installed on it if you like. You do pay a little bit of a premium for it. So be a little wary of that. I just buy Windows 1 in case you want to go back to Windows. You already have the license. But Dell laptops are great for that as well. But cool, let's get Linux installed. Let's run through this pretty quick. So I'm gonna change this. Hopefully this works. Cool. So this is so what you can see here is this window right here is actually a virtualized instance of Linux running. Everything you see in the background, this probably looks familiar to you up here. This is my Windows desktop now. You haven't seen this yet. But if I escape this, you can see this is a whole different operating system that's running inside of this window. A Linux operating system, but I'm just going to minimize that. Again, this is a type 2 hypervisor. I can operate with this however I want. I can operate it with it like it's another application. So cool. How would you do something like that? How would you get that installed? Well, the first thing you would do is you would head over to, I don't know what the URL for it is. I think it's virtualbox.org. So yeah, www.virtualbox.org, and let me make sure this is in the window. Let's make this a little bigger. You can head over to virtualbox.org and you can click download. Again, VirtualBox is also a free and open source application. You can install it on your computer for free. It works on Mac, Windows, and Linux, which is another reason why I use it. I think VMware Player does as well, but I've been using VirtualBox for a long time. But you just click on the download section and you can install it like any other application. So you have Windows host, click here, OS X host, Linux distributions. We talked about distribution, so this is immediately applicable to you. You can click on it and it will give you some options. Linux is the only one that's confusing because there are multiple types of Linux that you can install it on. All the rest, Windows, you just click Windows, it immediately downloads the file for you. I've already got it installed, so I'm going to discard it. Same thing for OS X host. You just click download and it gives you your DMG file. All you got to do once it's downloaded is click right on it and run through the installer. It's a very simple installer. Really, you just click next over and over again until it's done. It takes a few minutes to install. Actually, maybe I will download it real quick and go through it so that I can actually upgrade. Hopefully this download doesn't slow down the stream. I do have pretty fast downloads, but Comcast, I don't really have fast uploads. Baltimore City, you can only get Comcast, so I don't really have any other choice, but I do have pretty fast downloads, so hopefully that didn't affect anything. But once it downloads, go ahead and click on it. And again, just run through the installer. Looks like I'm already upgraded, but you can just go through and click through. I'll give everyone a few minutes to kind of get through that. If you want, if you're following along, anyone following along, that's great. So go ahead and install that. For anyone who has a Chromebook or has no desire to do this, so you don't need I wouldn't say you need a powerful computer for this to work, but you will be carving out an entirely new operating system within your currently running operating system. So I would say if you have a computer with less than 4 gigs of RAM, I'd probably recommend that you use one of the other options I'm about to show you now to do this, to get Linux installed or have access to Linux. So what we can do is you can go to Amazon.com. or not Amazon.com, you can Google AWS Light Sail. I think this is a little easier to use than the EC2 instance. Amazon Light Sail is a very simple VPS. This is a virtual private server. It's basically just a little, again, we're talking about virtualization. It is a virtualized server that they'll give you access to. I say Light Sail because they'll give you a month for free. All you need is a month to kind of get through the stuff that we're trying to do. You do have to sign up for an account. It might make you put in a credit card, but it will be free. They will not charge you for that first month. And I think after that first month, it's only $3.50 for Light Sail. There's some other options within inside of AWS, but they're a little more complicated to use. One of the easiest ones to use is DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean, I don't think offers any type of free tier, but I would highly recommend, for ease of use, to hop in and grab a simple, I think they have a $5 droplet that you can set up. It's better to, I think it's better to work with a droplet like this because, you don't have to worry about much. If you kind of mess up, it's kind of a throwaway. You can throw it away, start a new one. But yeah, I think the smallest one they have is $5 a month. If you're willing to shell out a little bit of money, I highly recommend it. You can, once we're done with the Linux portion and the web service portion, you'll see how you can use this for a lot of things other than just messing around to learn. There's, you can host your websites off of here. You can do a lot of different things off of this $5 a month one. So I'd hop into one of those two things, and they've got pretty good documentation. They got pretty good videos to help you kind of get up and running. Oh yeah, Linode. I forgot about Linode. Linode is another company that runs that gives you VPSs, so you can kind of just go on. They make it really easy to use. You say, hey, I just want this one right here. You click sign up. They'll give you the instructions on how to log into it and all that stuff, and you will have a Linux computer. You'll have a Linux server that you can go ahead and do everything that we're going to do here on. But I'm going to run through a quick installation just so you can see what it looks like if you are trying to spin it up via VirtualBox. So you can go ahead and you can grab, the first thing you need to do is go ahead and grab the file that you need to install an operating system. So if you Google Ubuntu or go to ubuntu.com, this is just an easy one to do. You can go ahead and get a lot of information on it if you like, and you can click the download button. And we're going to do Ubuntu Desktop. I'm not going to click on it. I'll click on it. I don't want it to download. It's going to download. It is. I'm going to stop it just because I don't want it to take up bandwidth here. But you can do this with Red Hat if you like, Fedora, but we're going to be going through, I'm going to be going through an Ubuntu-based distribution, so the commands are going to work a lot better with this. I'm also going to call out the Mac commands. If you are using Windows Subsystem for Linux, go to the Chrome Store, the Windows Store. Actually, do I have it up here? Go to the Windows Store if you want to use the Windows Subsystem for Linux, and search for Ubuntu. I think I have 1804 installed, but grab one of the Ubuntu ones, preferably 1804 if you like, and get that installed. If you don't know what Windows Subsystem for Linux is, Google how to install Windows Subsystem for Linux. I think you've got to do a little extra setup, and there's like a feature you have to enable, and it's probably better to do it after this, but it is a viable option for what we need to do. But if you're installing it through VirtualBox, once you go ahead and download it, it's probably a big download. I don't know, I don't know what people's internet speeds are out there, but it's a fairly large file. I think it's a little over a gig in size, so it might take a little bit to download. But once you have it, go ahead and open up. I'm gonna leave that open, and we're gonna open up VirtualBox. It's another application on your computer, and you can just go ahead and click into it. So I'll wait a little bit. Let me read some of the chat, and I'll let you all catch up to where I'm at now. Vultr, I've never heard of Vultr, but I do like DigitalOcean. It's got a lot of great guides, pretty great interface, makes it easy to use. Definitely spoiled with options. There's way too many options, which makes it kind of confusing sometimes, but it is good that you have them. So like I said, if you're someone on a Chromebook or something like that, you can absolutely get through all of this stuff. Will these commands be different for the Debian-derived Raspbian OS. So if it's Debian derived, they shouldn't be. Again, I'm using Ubuntu. Ubuntu is Debian derived as well. So so this should work on a Raspberry Pi. If not, ask questions. We can figure out what the right commands are, but most of the commands are going to work across the board. Really, the only ones that you have to really worry about are the ones to install packages. That's basically going to be the biggest, for the most part, that's going to be the biggest difference, is the command to install packages and to manage packages, because they all use different package managers. That's not till next class. I think this one you should be able to get through most of it. I think they're the same. They should be, but we'll figure it out. But if you have a Debian based one, you're probably have the right thing. Cool. Yeah, you will need to restart your computer if you enable Windows Subsystem for Linux. I think you have to go in and enable Hyper-V or disable Hyper-V or something like that, and that is a hypervisor. So Hyper-V is actually, I believe it's a bare metal hypervisor actually that runs on your system that allows you to kind of run both of these. The caveat: if you are running Windows Subsystem for Linux, you will lose, or maybe I'm thinking of Docker. You may lose access to run Virtualbox. Actually, that can't be right because I'm running both now. I think that's Docker. Then you'll lose your access to run Virtualbox. But you will need to restart your computer, but it does work pretty well. Should I download Virtualbox from Mac? This is what I'm using. Absolutely. You should absolutely download Virtualbox from Mac. And it should just I believe if you click, there's like a link there that if you click it, it'll figure it out for you and download the right one, but you should download the one from Mac. I definitely download the one from Mac. Oh, cool. Looks like we have let's check this out. A site for virtual machine images. Oh, yeah. Okay. It looks like they've kind of aggregated all of the Virtualbox images here for Ubuntu. That's cool. All right, yeah, Raspbian uses app, absolutely. So we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and install an extra one here real quick. So we've got when you open it up, it'll look like this. I know this is small. I don't know how to make it larger without changing my scaling on my computer, but I should be able to make everything else larger. VPS different than AWS Lightsail. Lightsail is a VPS. You can use that just like all the rest. Lightsail was the first one that I showed off. You're gonna have to make an AWS account later in this course anyway. I would recommend Lightsail again because you get that first month for free, but do whatever works for you. But once you get into Virtualbox, look, the screen looks like this. There's a couple options here. I already have a couple of virtual machines installed. So this is 4 different operating systems that I have installed on my computer. And the first one is running. This is the one that you've been looking at. So that's this one that you've been looking at for the whole course. And these other 3 I don't really use. I can probably delete these, but they stay up for now because when you're not running them, it's no big deal. Which is lighter, Pop! OS or Ubuntu? They're about the same. There's actually not much customization that Pop! OS does, but a few things to allow them to get firmware and updates out to you. They're about the same. I do prefer Pop! OS just because it works better with graphics cards. So if you have a computer with, if you're installing it directly on your computer and you have a graphics card, I would go with Pop! OS. It's a little bit easier to get all that set up and installed. You don't need to know quite as much, but they're about the same. But cool, once you want to set up a new one, you go ahead and click this button, new, very simple, and it'll drop you into a new box that says, hey, give me a name for this operating system, a name for this virtual machine and this operating system. And you can call it whatever you want. So I'm gonna call it Linux intro. And that's just for you to identify it. It'll show up here, but that's just for you to identify. And actually, let me see if I can. Let me see if I didn't want to mess with my scaling because I didn't want to mess up the stream, but let's go ahead and see if that makes anything better. That only did my other monitors and not the one that was weird. It's over here. Did it again, didn't work. Okay. We'll be able to make it bigger once we actually get it up and running. So Cool. We'll call it Linux intro. It asks you for a machine folder. So this is basically just a spot on your computer to save all the files that you need, that this VM needs. So again, this is going to install a bunch of things. We need to carve out a place on the hard drive for it. You can pick wherever you like. This is just like saving a file. So this shouldn't be too difficult. Find out a spot on your computer that you would like this to save to, and go ahead and leave it there. It gives you this default location. There's nothing wrong with saving it there. I'm going to save mine there, and I want to be good to go. This part is pretty important though. This the type piece. So it's going to have Linux by default. Sometimes it's going to have a few different options though. But click the one that matters. We're installing Linux, so we're going to install Linux. If we were installing a Windows server or another Windows operating system, we would choose Windows. Same for the rest of these things. Leave it on Linux. And the version is very important. You've got a few different types of Linux. So we talked about all those distributions. Find the one that most matches the one that you downloaded. So we downloaded Ubuntu, and so we're gonna we downloaded Ubuntu 64-bit, or at least I downloaded Ubuntu 64-bit, or the distribution that I'm using is a derivative of Ubuntu 64. And so I click on that and say, hey, this is the one that I'm going to use. I'm not sure that the distro matters, but I know that the bits matter. So if you downloaded a 32-bit operating system, you have to use that one. If you download a 64-bit, you have to choose that one. You can choose. You should be able to see whether what your computer is. I think on Mac, you can go to like about this Mac or something. On Windows, you can go to, about this PC or whatever. And I can see here that I have a 64-bit OS. I know it's really little. Again, I don't know. Yeah, I can't make it bigger with the Control Plus. This is why I like using the Stream VM. It's a little bit easier to work with the scaling because I use a pretty high resolution monitor. But mine is 64-bit there. So that's where you can check that. And again, on Mac, I think you can type in about this Mac, search for about this Mac, and it'll give you that stuff. So once you choose the right operating system, you go to next, and it'll let you go through and choose how much memory you want to give it. So this setting all matters on how much memory you have available to your computer. So if you've got, if I said it's best to use this if you have at least 8 gigs of RAM, I'd give it, for these purposes, I'd give it between 1.5 and 2, 2 being 2048. So between 1,000 and 2,000, I would give it that much. I think you'll be able to get through this. I'll also show you how to install it headless, so that you don't have any graphics to worry about. So it should be a lot lighter on your computer. But yeah, I'm gonna make mine. I have a lot of RAM here. I have 32 gigs, so just so it's fast, I'm gonna do. I'll do 6 for now, just to get it installed. You can leave the option for create virtual disk right here in the middle, the default option, and it's going to basically create a virtual hard disk for you. So we already saved some files somewhere, but this is so it carves out a place on your hard disk to save more files. And when we click create, any of these options is fine. I would leave it on VDI just by default. Don't worry about the differences between those right now. You can absolutely, do some research on that if you like. Leave it on VDI. This is just the type of hard disk that it's going to create for you. Different options provide different benefits. And so right now, we're going to use the VDI. Let's move this back over here. Cool. And then leave it on dynamically allocated. There's fixed size and dynamically allocated. This means that so you can, because it's virtual, you can resize these hard disks. So once you set up something once, you don't have to. It's not set in stone. You can make changes to these things. You can customize it however you'd like. And so dynamic versus fixed size, just dynamic usually means it's a little bit easier to the way it's set up makes it a little bit easier to expand and contract if there are any issues. Fixed size is faster to use, but take a little bit longer to create. Dynamically, again, you can grow them a little easier, or shrink them a little bit easier, but the performance of them may be a little bit slower because they kind of move different files around the disk and save them in different places. Again, not super important right now. We can leave it on dynamically allocated and click next. You can really go through and use all the default options if you like. For file size, file location and size, again, this is going to depend upon the resources that your computer has available. I recommend at least 15 gigs. 10 by default. I think once Ubuntu is installed, I think it's around 3 gigs. With formatting and everything, it'll give you maybe 5 or 6 gigs left. So I'd put it around 15. If you've got a lot of hard drive space, a lot of free space, then you can do more. If you're on Windows and you want to see how much free space you have, click onto the little file icon, and I think you can go to this PC, and you can see here how much space you have left. I have some pretty big hard drives over here that I can save to if I'd like. But just make sure you have some free space. Mac, I think you can do the same thing. I think it's pretty easy to see how much disk space you have. Make sure you have enough disk space, and go ahead and just click create. And so essentially that sets up the shell for your operating system. Pretty simple. It hasn't installed it yet, but it's carved out those resources. So again, we've given it some RAM. So I said, hey, I want 6 gigabytes of RAM. So it's going to say, all right, I'm going to make sure that I kind of allocate these 6 gigabytes of RAM to your computer whenever you're able to spin it up. And I'm going to make sure that the files are saved here, that I've carved out, that 15 gigs of space for you whenever you need it. So I'm going to change one more setting. So on my computer, again, if you have a more powerful computer, especially if you have a quad core computer up, I would click into settings. I'll click in the settings here. And I would give it a little more processor. So you have a lot of options here to make customizations to this virtual machine, but I will go to system, and then it shows your memory that you have here, but I will click processor. And I would go, honestly, I would give it one extra click. If you have a green bar here, I would give it one extra click into the green. As long as you have green space. I'll give it one more click into the green. This just gives it another virtual core, gives it a little more processing power, just for what we're gonna do. And then I click OK. That's the only other modification I would make besides all the defaults. Once you got that set up, it'll give you a little overview here of what you have. Again, don't worry about what all these options are. There's a lot of stuff here, just specifics about your storage, specifics about your audio, specifics about your network. All that's not going to make a lot of sense to you right now, but just know that on this overview screen, you can kind of get the high level overview of how your stuff is set up, and you can adjust it accordingly. And you can kind of see what's going on pretty quickly with your system. And all you got to do to start it is click the start button. So again, we're interacting with it like it's another application, so it's very simple. And what this does is it opens up a box, another window that's just like any other application. And the first time you start it up, it's going to say, hey, do you want to start up from a disk? The file that we downloaded from the Ubuntu website is it's an ISO image, and this is a disk image. Sometimes you used to burn this to a CD, so you would burn it to an actual disk. And you pop that disk in your computer, and you would use that disk to install Linux. Most computers don't come with optical drives anymore, so you can't pop a disk into your computer. But what you can do is take that file and load it in. So click the little folder icon here, find out where you downloaded that thing. Oh yeah, way back when people used physical media. So we don't use disks anymore, but what we do use are thumb drives. So if you have a USB stick, you can burn this ISO image to your USB stick, and you can run this operating system live off of the USB stick. So it's a great thing to have with you in case of emergencies. So as you kind of get deeper into Linux, by Labor Day, after Labor Day, go ahead and grab yourself a USB stick. I'll show you how to install it on that USB stick and carry that with you in case there are any problems. You can take it to your friend's house. If they have a bunch of viruses on their computer, you can remove them using Linux, and you can recover their files. And if there are other things, Wi-Fi issues, you can kind of fix that using this live operating system. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, there's not a lot of people are using physical devices, physical media to install things like that anymore. But you can see here, it even shows an image of a disk. So these are those ISO files. So this one's Ubuntu. I'll install Ubuntu because that's what I told you all to download. Now click open, and you can see it'll fill it in here, and then you click start. And this will start your operating system. So you'll see it start up just like you're used to seeing with your computer, and I'll minimize this so you can see what's going on. The first time you run it, there may be some weird issues with the resolution. There may be some weird issues with your mouse or something like that. Usually resolution is going to be the one problem. Go ahead and get it installed first. and then we can work out the resolution issues. It kind of has to load up some files, load up some tools to work through those things sometimes, but give it a little time. It may take a little bit of time to start the first time. So we've got our box here. Linux does have a graphical installer most of the time. If you have to install Linux on servers, a lot of the times you'll be running through, you usually be running through a graphical installer still. But it'll have a lot less options. It won't be this pretty usually. I was going to go through that, but I think when you're first learning Linux, it's a lot easier to understand if you go through all the command line things along with a graphical user interface, so that you can immediately reference some of the things that have been done. So we are gonna install the graphical user interface here, and so you can try it. So remember, I talked about that live CD that you could use, that you could pop in that USB stick and you could try it live. That's what Try Ubuntu would be. So I could click on that and I could click around. I'll show you that, and I'll click around and I'll use Ubuntu as it is. I can't really save anything to it permanently, but I can, surf the web and connect to the internet and use Ubuntu. So let's see. So yeah, so usually, again, like I said, there's some resolution issues. So I'll right click, I'll try to change the resolution. So usually, so Linux is not that different, especially Ubuntu. It's not that different from Mac or Windows. A lot of people think it's going to be this crazy thing. It's got a lot of the same tools. It is, it's a desktop environment. So it's built for you to be able to use easily. So it's got a lot of things set up in a way that are easy for you to use. So I thought I could right click and go to like resolution or something, but I can just go to the menu, and I can type in, I know that I can type in displays. So if you type in display, I'll just click on this option and see if I have any options available to me. So resolution, there we go. Let's go with this 1680, and let's actually go a little bit larger. Let's go 1920 by 1080 here. Nope. I'll go as large as possible while still being on screen. Keep changes, and I'm gonna do one more thing here if it lets me. I want to see if I could turn up my my scaling, but I'll leave it as is for now. So I'll stop right there because that was a lot. I clicked through, all those default settings, and then I clicked try Ubuntu. So it's not actually installed yet. So let's see what we have. Do we have any questions? It doesn't look like we have any questions yet. Cool. So again, now we're just using the live operating system. This is on the fly, nothing special. Nothing's installed yet, and you can see I can click into Chrome. I click into Firefox being, a tool that's available that most people are familiar with. And I can just go straight to google.com. And I can use it as normal, and I can open up. They're also text editors and all kinds of other stuff that you can install. I can listen to music if I had music on here. Same thing, file systems. I can kind of look through and look at my documents and things like that. So it's not crazy. It's not different from what you're familiar with. Again, I have Libreoffice, which is a Microsoft Word equivalent. I can go in, I can type a paper, no problem. But let's go ahead and get this installed now. So after you've tried it, you can go ahead and click this install thing here, and it'll take you and run you through an installation. So this is real fast. It's gonna ask you for your language. Click continue. It's gonna be real straightforward. Click continue. It's gonna ask you for that was asking for my keyboard format. Just go ahead and click. If you're in the US, click US. Whatever country you're in, click the proper country. Click the proper language. If you want Spanish, click Spanish. Choose the one that you would like. And so you've got a few options here when you try to install it. We've got normal installation and minimal installation. Minimal is only going to give you very basic tools. So in the beginning, I said a distribution is just the Linux kernel with a bunch of applications and tools packaged on top of it. Normal installation will give you all the cool stuff that Ubuntu thinks it's good for you to have. Again, it'll have games, office software, media players, and things like that. But if you just want something really light, and you want to choose what applications you have and you only want the things that you need, go ahead and choose the minimal installation, and it'll give you the basic utilities and web browsers. I've seen this should work fine on a virtual machine, but minimal installations on your own hardware, like if you're actually installing on your computer, sometimes it doesn't give you some of the things you need, like your drivers for your wireless card or Bluetooth or something like that. So you might have a little bit of trouble installing those things, but no big deal. So right now we're gonna choose normal, and you have these options: download updates while installing Ubuntu. So updates, just like, you know, people are familiar with the infamous Windows updates, Ubuntu also has an update system just like Mac OS does. But you can kind of run these updates while you're installing everything. You can have it download and stage them to be installed during that time. I'm not going to do that right now. And install third-party software and hardware, I'm not going to do that either right now. If you have things like graphics cards and, you know, weird Wi-Fi hardware, you can choose that. It'll try to install some third-party drivers. That can cause you some issues. So if you have some installation problems, it's probably because you did that, or it's probably because you didn't do that. It's kind of just a game of playing around and seeing what works. And go ahead and click continue. The first one's fine. Yeah, it's hard to see. Actually, I think I can do. Let's see if this works. I can try to scale to 150%. Wow, that did not do. It broke everything, but I can fix it. Displays. A little large. Let's go. That 4x3 is not gonna work. Let's go 16 by back over. All right, that should be a little better. Should be a little better. All right, so what we're gonna do is it's gonna give you some options when you actually go through and click install. It's gonna say, hey, do you want to erase the disk and install Ubuntu? This is a very fresh hard disk, so this is the one that we're gonna leave it on. If you can also do something called dual booting or triple booting or whatever, but you can actually install this alongside. If we weren't doing this in a hypervisor, you can install this alongside your host operating system. So I'm running Windows here on this computer. I could actually install Linux alongside of it, and you would do that by clicking something else. And basically, when you start up the computer, it will go to something called a Grub Menu, and it would allow you to choose which operating system you would want to boot into. So you at the very start of the process, it will come up and say, hey, you got Windows here, you got Windows 10, you've got Ubuntu. You know, I could have, you know, a bunch of other operating systems as well, you know, as long as I had space. And I would be able to choose which one I wanted to go into, and I could use that operating system. And if I wanted to get into another OS, I would restart the computer and choose that one. But we're going to click erase disk and install Ubuntu. And we're going to click, it's going to give you a little message about the changes that's going to make to the disk. Don't sweat that, just click continue. And then it's actually going to start installing things. I think it's already installing in the background. And then it's going to ask you some simpler questions. So it's going to ask you your time zone. You know, I'm on the East Coast of the United States, so we'll go to New York. It's going to ask me my name. So I'm going to say Aaron, and my computer's name. It'll automatically fill this in for you. You can call your computer whatever you want to call it. So I can call my computer Mastermind IO. I can pick a username, and so I'll change that to Mastermind. Password, again, this is a normal computer setup, nothing special here. So my password, I'm not gonna tell you what my password is. I'm gonna make it short so I don't forget it though, but it's strong password. Put it in twice, make sure it matches, and then you have some options here. You can either log in automatically or require a password to log in. I'm gonna leave the password on there, no big deal. Yes, this is the same information material that's on the Zero to Hero Crucible series. So I have already done a stream with getting Linux installed, so I can provide you guys some more resources on getting Linux installed. But this, after the installation, we'll go a lot more in depth with Linux concepts. We have, more time to do so. So the actual Linux content is going to be a lot more in depth here than it was on those Crucible videos. But getting it installed, absolutely, you can reference that video if you need to. But cool, we'll just click continue, and this is going to go ahead and get this installed. It's going to run through, it's going to install, let it do what it wants to do. If you want to watch what it's doing, you can click down here. Not going to make any sense to you, no big deal. If you just want to make sure that it's doing something, you can do that, and kind of let it run through. But let that get installed. But hopefully this shows you, first off, that Linux is not this wildly complicated, confusing operating system. It actually has, again, a lot of the same tools, a lot of the paradigms that you're used to. It allows for those things, and we'll be able to install a lot of the applications that you're used to. But when you're actually working on this stuff, you probably won't have this available to you. You probably won't have a GUI available to you. This is a GUI, stands for Graphical User Interface, and that is exactly what you're looking at. You'll probably be dropped into a terminal, and so you'll log into the computer. And so this will happen actually if you get a server off of Linode or Amazon Lightsail or DigitalOcean. You will get dropped into a terminal, which is basically this. So ignore everything off to the left. You will get this terminal. You get dropped into a text-only terminal, and you can run the entire computer from this terminal. Everything that you do on the graphical user interface is actually just basically just running a command in here, and you're just doing it by clicking on things. So I wanted to install a graphical version of this to be able to show you those paradigms, to show you, when I add a user, that like it's just like adding a user on your system, like on your Mac or your Windows PC. You'll be able to see that if I add one here on the terminal, I'll be able to log out and log in as that user, and I'll be able to see that user in my list of users, and I'll be able to change my password, and I'll be able to connect to Wi-Fi or shut down my Wi-Fi card or turn on Bluetooth. I'll be able to install applications. I'll be able to do tons of different things, and you'll be able to do all that from the command line. So again, everything that you do from your computer normally is really sending information. It's really doing it via this thing that you're seeing here. And so we're going to learn how to do that manually ourselves. And so, if you can run around and you can play with the Linux distro you have while it's getting installed, and we'll let that run in the background. We're going to start moving on to the next stuff, because this is actually the last part of the installation. At the very end, it'll ask me if I want to restart it. Go ahead and click restart. I'm going to let that run, but I'm actually going to click back into the other one that we have. So this is the main one that we're always running. And let me see, did I have any more slides? I didn't have any more slides for that, but I do want to start going over, I want to get hands-on with Linux. So let's just install, and you can start trying this stuff afterwards. I want to make sure I get you guys out of here, by 10 o'clock or 10 p.m. Eastern time. But we're going to hop straight into it. So let's look at this again and see what we're going to learn tonight. We're going to learn how to do things like, we learned a little bit about virtualization. We learned about installing Linux a little bit. We ran through that pretty fast. There are a lot of resources for that. Again, I'll pass those resources out. I wanted you to see it kind of real time. So when you're following, sometimes when you're following a video, people don't run into the same issues that you run into and things like that. So hopefully you're able to follow that along. But again, it's absolutely something you'll be able to get installed on your own. I think, especially if you got Virtualbox installed and you got the ISO image downloaded, you can definitely get through that. But now let's learn how to use Linux. So we got it installed. Let's learn how to use it. So I'm going to show you. First, we're going to go through some command line navigation. So what does that mean? So this is getting around a computer. So the same way you would know how to get around your Mac or PC, you know how to use the Finder, and you know how to find your files, and you know how to get into My Documents, and all that stuff. You know how to go back. I'm in My Documents now, but I want to see all my other folders, and I know I can just click on this button, and now I can see my downloads and things, and I go into too many folders and I want to get back. I know how to go back one. Let's learn how to do that from the command line. We're basically going to learn to live in the command line, and I'm going to open this up, and we're going to stay in here for a little while. Actually, we're going to go back and forth because I want to show you real time kind of what's happening. So when you open up the terminal, it drops you into this shell, and you have this little prompt here. It should be, by default, it should be your username. So my username on this computer is Abrooks. The name of my computer is just Pop OS. I can call it whatever I want. You saw that in the other installation. Actually, I think we called it. Okay, so this is a restart. We called it I think Mastermind is the name of the computer. And so if the name of my computer was Mastermind, it will say Mastermind here. And so a quick command just to show you that I am the user A Brooks. I can type in who am I, and it tells me I'm A Brooks. So you can see my user at PopOS. And I think I can show you my computer name by going to About. And I think it'll show you that its computer name is PopOS. Yeah, device name, PopOS. So I think if I change this, and I X out of here, I think that saves it, and I X out of this and reopen it, you can see how it changed the name to A Brooks at Mastermind. So that's my machine name. So now I can control everything on this computer from this terminal, and we're gonna learn how to first get around this terminal. So the first command I want you to learn, the most important command I want you to learn is CD. CD stands for change directory. So how do we use CD? So I can type in CD, and if you type in a command and you don't know what it does, you can do the name of the command, and you can type in help or what? No manual entry for CD. Let's go CD -- help. All right, cool. So if you ever need help learning what a command does, you can Google it. You should Google it first. But you should get comfortable. You should do your best over time to get comfortable with staying in the command line, because again, a lot of times you'll log into servers that don't have a graphical user interface. You can't just Google stuff. And so you can use what you have available to you from the command line to get that information. And so you can do one of two things. Almost everything has a man page. Man stands for manual. So you can type in man and the name of the command, and it'll usually give you that information. Or you can do a -- help, and that'll give you some information. And man pages look very similar to this, but CD, these get a little hard to read at first, but don't trip over that. Start trying to read them. You can see here it tells us what to do. We've got some stuff up here that you don't need to know what it does, but it says, hey, change the shell working directory. You don't need to read the rest right now, but this is how you change the directory. So I'm going to clear the screen. Now I'm typing CD, and so by default it drops me into my home folder. In Linux, a shortcut for home is this little tilde. So a little tilde here is a alias for home, and so you can see when I was in this files thing here, it talks about my home directory. So home, that home directory is usually like /home / the name of your user. So this is where all of my stuff lives. So you can see all these. Take a look at all these files here. I have folders, desktop, documents, downloads, exorcism, Golang, videos. All that stuff is here. Can I see all these things from where I'm at currently? Absolutely. By doing ls, I can see all of these things. So there's a text representation of everything that you just saw. Everything that you just saw right here. They're all here. I like to use the LL alias. It shows it to you in a little different way. Let me clear that. Or you can do an ls-l. That's a little bit better. It gives it to you in a different format. Don't worry about what that -l does quite yet. But just know that, again, we're doing the same thing that we did by clicking on the files thing and taking a look at everything. We can see this. So in here, if I wanted to get in my documents, I would click on my documents, and now I can see these files that are in my documents. I can use that CD command to get into my documents. So I can go CD, documents, and hit enter. And so we're good. Don't forget, CD means change directory. And so now I'm in my documents. Again, I told you about the ls command. ls stands for list. It might stand for list something, but it stands for list. And so you can list the files that are in here, and I can confirm that I'm in the same directory. I can see I have folders here matching the same names that are here. So again, I'm doing the same thing from the command line that I am doing from the graphical user interface. Cool. Here, it shows you the breadcrumbs, and let's say I want to get back to home because I actually meant to go into downloads. How would I do that from the command line? How would I go backwards? So again, first thing you need to remember is CD means change directory, and you can use that to initiate a move into a new directory. Now we're going to use CD to get out of the directory we're in. So you can also see that my prompt changed. So before it showed the little tilde here, and then once I moved into my documents, it showed that I was in tilde documents. And so this is a good way to keep track of where you are. There's another way to do that, and that's with the Pwd command. Pwd stands for present working directory. So again, these first couple commands are fairly straightforward. They stand for what they are. And so that makes them, at least for me, that made them a little bit easier to remember in the beginning. And so if you ever are confused about where you are, if you type in Pwd, that'll tell you where you are. So I'm in home Abrooks documents. So this is just the folder that I'm currently in. But if I want to get back to home, which is home Abrooks, to move backwards, you type in CD and you type in 2 dots. 2 dots will take you back one directory, a single directory. So you can see here I was in documents, and now I'm no longer in documents. If I type in Pwd, you can see here it moved me back one directory, and if I go back one more, it takes me to home, and you can see if I do Pwd, I'm back one more directory from here. So I'm going to go back into Abrooks because that's my users directory, and cool. And now I have my files and everything here. So that's the first big one that you want to use. You want to get comfortable with changing in directory. So we went to documents, and if I look in here and I see that there's other stuff, we working out of that stream code folder once. So let's say I also want to go into stream code, and I want to see what's inside of it. And I see what's inside of it, and I want to make sure I'm in the right directory, and I want to use that Pwd command and make sure I am where I think I'm going to be. And if I want to go back, I want to make sure I use that CD ... So that's the first bit of navigation you want here. That's just, moving forwards, moving backwards through the file system. So getting to the places that you need to be, getting to the files that you need to be at. It takes a little bit of time to kind of, practice to be able to do fluently. But once you get there, you're there, and it's amazing. I prefer getting around my computer via the command line than I do with clicking on things because it's a little bit faster for me. The next thing we're going to talk about is still this navigation, but it's the concept of relative versus absolute file pathing. And this is very, very important in Linux, like extremely important in Linux and Unix. And this is just because we're using the command line to get around, we need to understand how to give the computer proper directions, how to get there. And so I kind of compare this to Google Maps sometimes. So absolute file pathing is all the directions the computer needs to get to a certain point from start to finish. So again, you go to Google Maps, and you type in a start address, you type in an end address, and it tells you how to get there. The same thing works here for, let's say I want to get to in the downloads folder, there's this shell folder. I was hoping there's another folder. Let's see, in documents, there's a Cerebro master, and there's a content folder, and there's a JavaScript fundamentals folder. All right, there's a lot of stuff here. So we want to get all the way. We want to move from wherever we are to all the way to this console file. So that's a long file path. So how do we get there? Again, we know that we can use CD to get there, to change the directory, but we need to know that path on how to get there. So there are 2 ways to get there from where I am now. So I'll show you the first way. I do CD, and then I give it the absolute path. So I give it, the start destination. So the start destination, when you're doing absolute file pathing, will always be the root of the device. In Linux, the root of the device is always a slash. So you start from slash, and I know that it's in my home it's in my home directory. Let's figure this out. Actually, it's in my home directory, and then it's in documents, Cerebro master, content, JavaScript fundamentals. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 directories there. Really, Really, it's 6 because your home directory is actually alias for 2 directories, honestly. So we need to get all the way into here. And again, so we're gonna do it from the base file system. So if it starts with a slash, it is always absolute. So whenever you lead with this leading slash, it's always going to be starting from the beginning of the file system, and you always have to give it the entire path from the beginning. So home, A Brooks. So this is the alias for home. So this actually is the same thing as this, but don't worry about that right now. Home, A Brooks. What is it? Documents. What else do we have? We went documents, Cerebro Master, content, JavaScript fundamental. So Cerebro Master, content, JavaScript fundamentals, and then what else was there? Let's go to conditionals and functions, and console.md. So all right, so we had to type in all of this long path to get to that console.md file. So currently we're in the documents folder. So remember that we are currently in documents, and if I enter it, you can see here it moves me into that directory. And if I do that ls command that we learned, you can see here that this console.md file is here. Yes, I am hitting autocomplete. I was going to wait to talk about autocomplete, but you asked about it, so I will talk about it. If Linux has this really cool thing that it does, and it autocompletes your file paths, and it does that by checking to see what is the next match that matches the string that you put in. So we talk about strings. It checks what's in your current directory, and it matches that string. And if there is a one match, or if there is something that is the best match, it will fill that in for you. So I don't need to type in all this stuff. In the beginning, you should probably type in that stuff because it takes a little while to get the hang of autocomplete. But again, I've got this whole file path. So this is an absolute file path. I did from the start of the computer. Again, remember slash, when you see slash at the beginning, that's an absolute file path. And I had to give it the entire path all the way to this console.md file. Cool. That is an absolute file path. Again, start to finish, you always start at the front, you always start at slash, and you give it the entire path to the file. This will always work. The second way we have to do this is relative. So if I said absolute starts with slash, relative does not start with slash. And relative is the way to get to that file or get to that location relative to the place that you're currently at. So these are the directions from your current location rather than your starting home address. If you drove around the corner to go to 7-Eleven to get a snack, and now you want to go to your parents' house, this is their directions from that 7-Eleven rather than from your house. It is relative to where you are. So let's take a look at this whole path here that we had to take before. But we're currently, so this is the entire thing, but interesting enough, we're in my documents. So we're currently already inside of these 3 folders. We're already up to the 3rd piece. So to be able to move into where we were, we don't have to start from the beginning. We can start from where we are. So what comes after documents? I'm already in my documents. That means I can go straight into Cerebro Master, and you can see there's no slash there. Remember, slash is absolute file path, absolute being the entire thing from the very beginning. Relative, no slash, and it is from where you currently are. So Cerebro Master, content. And you can see here, I'm not typing this fast. I'm typing in a single letter, JavaScript, and it fills in JavaScript fundamentals, because if I go into this content directory, there are only 2 files in here. So it'll autofill the one that matches the most. So if I do an underscore and hit, if I do like cat underscore and hit tab, it'll fill in that because it's the only file that matters. If I do, let's clear this. This is something important to note about that autocomplete. If I make another directory called like Java test, this is what autocomplete will do. And this is why I wasn't sure. This is why I kind of want to wait on the autocomplete a little bit. But now we can see that we have 2 folders that start with Java. And if I type in cd Java and hit tab, it will only fill in up until it gets until it gets confused. So I typed in Java and I hit tab. These both have the same letters up until here, and then it stops. It says, hey, I don't know which one you want, so give me the next letter now. So if I want Java test, I'll give it a capital T and hit tab, and now it'll fill in Java test. But if I give it just the S, it'll give me JavaScript fundamentals. And so that's how kind of autocomplete works. So you got to be wary about the things that you have along the path. It can mess you up sometimes, but it's usually pretty good. So let's remove Java test. We don't really need it. Cool. So this is actually another good way to talk about relative file pathing. We're still trying to get into that the Cerebro master content, JavaScript fundamentals file, but now we're in a new location. We're already in content. So we don't have to start from further back. We can see what's in this file, and we can start from right here. So we can cd into JavaScript fundamentals, conditionals and functions. And now we're back in the same location. And we did it by using relative paths rather than absolute paths. And now you can see our console file is here. That can be very confusing. It took me a long time to really understand absolute versus relative file pathing. And again, the best way I can say it is absolute is basically like you always get the directions from your house. Your house always starts at slash, and every time you get directions from somewhere, you're always doing it. You're always getting the directions to your endpoint from your house every single time. The entire distance is what you get. A relative is you being, you already ventured out. You're somewhere along the way, and it is Google Maps taking you to your location, taking you to your destination, and giving you the directions from where you currently are. That is the difference. Hopefully, practice with that. So try putting a slash in front of some things. So actually, let me show you this. If I try to put a slash, if I'm trying to go into this conditionals and functions folder, and I put a slash in front and type in C, it won't autocomplete for me, actually. It won't autocomplete because when I type in the slash, it's now checking from the very beginning of the file system. So it's checking a slash, and this folder doesn't exist there, so I can't type it in. It will not allow me to do anything. It'll tell me no such file directory because I'm not giving it the right file path here. So definitely take some time, learn about file pathing for sure. All right, let's check some questions here. Backslashes are escape characters. Yeah, I wish these didn't have escape characters. So basically, those backslashes you see in here are getting filled in automatically because these folder names actually have spaces in them, and usually we wouldn't want that to happen. Usually, if you were naming the folder, you probably want to stay away from slashes because it can cause some stay away from spaces in your folder names because it would cause issues like these weird slashes. But that's what they're doing. They are it's called escaping special characters, and it's basically letting the computer know that, hey, I'm not giving you a new command. I'm not giving you, this is not another piece of the command. This is not another parameter we're passing in. This is still the same line of text, still the same string that we're working with before, and so that the computer then interprets it that way. So those are the backslashes are. That really confused me at first, like figuring out how you could specify a name of a folder that had a slash, that had space in it, because I can't just go, like if I try to cd into this and I remove, like if I write it exactly how it is and hit enter, it lets me know I have too many arguments because it thinks each of these are new arguments to the cd command. It thinks conditionals is one, and then and is a whole separate piece, and functions is a whole separate piece, and it doesn't know what to do with all those things. So the slashes just make sure the backslashes just make sure it knows that this is all one long string. Yeah, let's see. I've never read the book Accelerate. I definitely would check it out. What's Accelerate about? If it's a good book, I'd love to check it out. Let's see. Slash is a reference to the parent directory. The dot slash reference current directory. All right, absolutely. So if the questions are about these right here, remember we talked about the cd dot dot being you going back a directory. This is just a reference again to that parent directory, saying, hey, the parent directory being the one above this, two dots is one back, and the dot slash is the current place you're at. So if you ever see a single dot, one dot means right where I am now. So if you see this, it means check right here. So you actually can put a slash for a relative link. You can put it doesn't start with a slash, but you can put a slash for relative link if I wanted to cd dot slash. So the dot indicates right where I am now. So now I'm starting the relative path right where I am now. And if I do a slash, I can type in conditionals and functions, and it reads that. It understands that because that dot says right here. And that's very different from this dot is very different from no dot, like very different. And this would allow me to change into there. But yeah, one dot is the current place you're at. Two dots means go back one. Very important. Again, so we just learned, what did we just learn? We learned CD. We learned CD means change directory. We can change into a directory by CDing into the directory name, or by changing into the directory file path that we care about. We know that we can go back one directory by cd dot dot. That'll let us go back one. We learned that we can find out where we are by typing in Pwd, which stands for present working directory, and that'll show us the entire. So Pwd always shows you your absolute file path to your current location. So this is the full instructions from your house to where you are now. That shows you the entire thing. Yes, that shows you your entire thing. Besides that, I think that's all we learned. And then we learned about absolute pathing, and we learned about relative pathing. Those are two big things. Cool. What else are we gonna learn about? So that is some very basics to command line navigation. That's all the important stuff, though. Moving around, finding out where you are currently, and then your breadcrumbs and your GPS basically on how to get to the directories and files that you want to get to. That is your navigation. That's how you get around on the command line. So definitely practice getting around. The next thing we're going to talk about is users and groups. So one of the things that you might do as a DevOps engineer or as a systems administrator or someone managing servers is you'll have to set up, you have to add users. You have to give people access to the stuff that you're using. And again, you can do that on a normal computer, on Mac, Windows, even Linux. I think I can just just type in users and go ahead in here, and I can type in, let's go ahead and minimize all this. And cool, this is my user and this is my password. But if I want to add a new user, I can click add user. This is just like any other computer, and I'll add a standard user and I'll call it stream. Actually, I'm gonna call it the GUI user. So just to specify that this is the user that we're creating from the GUI. GUI again meaning graphical user interface. The username is gonna be GUI, and I'm gonna set a password, and I'm gonna set their password to password. None of you can log into here, so it's not a big deal. It won't let me do that. Password 1. Nope, won't let me. All right, fine. I'll give it a little more complicated password. A medium one. Match. Cool, really simple. So you may have to do this. You may get, you just had someone join the team. That person's name is GUI, and they need access to your systems. You've now added them as a user, and cool. And now they're a standard user on the machine, and they can now be used. So if I log out, power off. I want to log out, or I can switch user. I'm gonna log out really quick. It should. All right, logged out, and now you can see here. This used to be the only user here, but I added GUI, so I can log in as GUI. And when I log in, it'll give me some more things. But again, very simple. So you can see I have a whole different desktop environment that I had before. I get a whole welcome screen that I can run through and set some stuff up, but we're not gonna worry about that. just, you saw here, that's me setting up a user. It's no big deal. Let's go ahead and switch back to our administrator account, and let's do this via the command line. So that same process we just went through, we're gonna go ahead and make that from the command line. So, hey Doug Butter, I'm doing good today. How you doing today? You know, it wasn't a bad Monday at all. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but you haven't heard the dog barking. She actually had surgery, a very expensive surgery, on her knee, so to get her back 100%. So she is resting and she's not all crazy right now. So actually, let's move this back to here. But I did have a good day. Hopefully, you had a good day as well. Let's see. Command thing, get slow through it. Oh yeah, Pop OS. Pop OS is just an Ubuntu-based distribution. I think if you just Google it, it'll take you to System76's website. So that's the company who creates it. Again, it's basically a customized Ubuntu image. It's got a few tweaks and things like that, but that is what I'm using here. This is Pop OS. I've done some customizations to it as well, so yours won't look exactly like this. But yeah, so we just created that user. Now that we've created that user via the GUI, let's create the user via the command line. And it's funny because I haven't done this in a while, so it's one of two commands. I think it's user add should be it. I believe it's user add and then the name of the user. So we call the first one GUI, and let's call this one command line. Whoops. Okay, so excellent. So we typed it in and it gave us a permission denied. Then it gives us another error. Don't sweat that one, says cannot lock Etsy password, try again later. No big deal. This is a common thing you'll see when doing things from the command line. Because the computer runs, because you can do everything from the command line, the command line's a bit more secure. Not really. The command line has some security features around it to make sure you can't do anything you want. This is just like in Windows. If you ever need to install anything as administrator, what you need to do is you need to escalate yourself. You need to escalate your privileges. So right now, my user doesn't have access to be able to, just add a user, and that's really important. But to do that, all you need to do whenever you see this is try out the command sudo. Sudo stands for super user do. And what this does is this escalates your privileges to be able to do something. You won't always have this available to you if you're not a systems if you're not administering the system. If you didn't install Linux yourself, then you might not have this available to you. You might have to request access, but by default, especially on the installations that you have now, especially if you use any of the services that we told you about earlier, you can absolutely use sudo, and you can type that in. When you do it, it'll ask you for your password. And then again, this is just like Macs. All of them have this paradigm from the GUI that if you want to do something that is, that is a little more important, a little more secure, you have to enter in your password. You type it in. When you type in that password, you will not see that password get typed in. It will not do that. It'll stay blank. It'll look like there's nothing there, but it is being typed in, so don't worry about that. And cool. So I've added my user. And I can show how you can see the users in a little bit, but I'm going to give my user a password. And to give a password, so just like that, you can add a user. I want to give my user a password. So, what is it? I haven't done any of this in a long time. It's passwd, and then the name of my user. So I created a user called command line, and I'm going to set my password for command line. And again, I may not view or modify the password information for command line. Why might that be? Maybe because I'm not a super user. So get comfortable typing in sudo. Once we get to later in the class tomorrow, I will show you, on Wednesday, I will show you how you cannot type in sudo all the time. It's dangerous. I'll tell you when it's dangerous. I'll tell you why it's dangerous. But sudo is something you need to get comfortable with. And you type it in, and it asks you for the new password for the user. So I'm going to type in password, which it would not let me do before, but it'll let me do it here. I think it'll let me do it. Cool, password updated. So just like I did in the GUI, I've now created a user via the command line called command line, and I've set a password for that user. So I'm also going to teach you how to delete users. So, we created that GUI user. We already logged in as the GUI user. You saw that you could do that. what we can do is we can do user delete, so user del, and the name of that user. And I can do user delete GUI. And again, it gives me the permission denied. Why does it give me the permission denied? Again, it's because we did not use sudo. So if you ever type in a command and you want to try it again, you hit the up arrow, it will run back through the history of your command. So hit up once, it goes to the last command, hit up twice, it goes to 2 commands ago, and you can just run through that. But I'll hit up, and I'll put sudo at the beginning of that, and it goes through successfully. We'll be able to see that shortly. So just now you learned how to add a user. So we did user add and the name of the user. That's how you add a user to the system. Pass WD right here is how you and the name of the user is how you set a password. We learned about sudo, which escalates your privileges, and we learned about user delete, which allows you to delete a user. And let's go ahead and make sure that was done properly. So I'm going to log out of here, and hopefully we're going to see now that the GUI user is deleted. That's the last thing we did. We deleted that user, and then we created the user command line, and that command line user is here, and I can type in a password, and it allows me to log in. So we've successfully failed, not found. Okay, so this is so that happened for a very particular reason. This you will learn. I'll tell you why that happened now, but you'll learn how to fix that next class. I gave this user, I created it. I gave them a username and password, but I didn't give it a shell. I didn't set up a lot of other things that it needed to be able to run properly. I didn't give it a home directory and things like that. When you do it through the GUI, you kind of get all that by default, again, because the GUI is designed to make things as easy as possible for you. When you are doing things from the command line, you'll have to enter in a little more data usually. There are ways to kind of set a lot of that stuff by default. That's not set up currently, but again, I was able to create a user, no problem. Give it a password, and I was able to log in, even though it gave me some Virtualbox errors. Those errors aren't a big deal. So we'll go ahead and we'll delete that user. But the important thing is that you understand the commands necessary to add a user, delete a user, and give the user a password. Because that, again, that is something important that you may have to do pretty often. So if you ever want to check a user, and we're talking about groups in a second, but you can do, you can look at this file called etc_password. So there's this file here that kind of keeps track of your users, a little more information about them, their groups, and a few other things about their shell, etc. This cat command, which we'll learn about, stands for concatenate. It basically spits out the contents of a file to the screen. So if we wrote a program, if we wrote an entire, Golang program or Python program into a file, and we cat that file, we did cat our program, it would spit out everything that's in that file, all the text. It would just spit it out to the terminal. That's how you get information. That's how you kind of take a peek at a file on a terminal. And if I cat etc_password, this is a file, and it's got some information in here about users. It's got information about my Brooks user here. And then it's got some information about the command line user that I created. It's got its UID and some stuff like that. It's got its groups. It's got the groups that it's in. It's got its shell. It's got its shell here. And yeah, it's got information about that. This file is important. This is something that you can check. There's a lot of other users in here. There's a lot of system users that get set up, and so all those are in here. So if you're ever wondering what users you have available to you that you can use for different things, that you can deploy apps with, you want to know what apps are running as, you can kind of check this list to kind of use this as a reference to what's on your system. But this file can also be used again to make sure that that user actually got created properly. If we go ahead and we create that GUI user again from here, again sudo. I'm not used to typing sudo because I'm usually an admin, but this is how you're supposed to do things. And we look at that again, we can now see that the GUI user was added here. It's no big deal. All right, that's user management. And now we're gonna get into group management. We'll talk about groups and get into group management. Anyone have any questions here? Can you view your list of users from the terminal? Yes, that's how you can view your list of users. There might be an easier way or a better format. This is the way that I've always done it. I've always used SE password to kind of check out what users were there from the command line. Always worked out well for me. Never needed more than that, but there probably is a simpler list. Take a look at what happens if you delete yourself. Great question. This is what virtual machines are great for. I don't think it will allow me to delete myself, because I think I would have to switch to another user first. And then I could delete myself, and I can never log back into that user until I recreated it. But yes, it will not let you. Linux is smart enough to let you know that you cannot delete yourself. So great question. We tried it out. We're not really scared to try anything over here. So cool. So cool. All right. So now let's talk about groups. So groups are really important in Linux as well. Groups are how you manage a set of users. So different users can have different access to different things and can touch different things, and they've got different access, like I said. But you need to create these groups, and then you need to administer them. So you need to put people in certain groups, and maybe you'll have a group for your HR folk, and they can only touch a certain subset of applications, and you set all that up. And as a new user comes on, you add them to the a new HR admin comes on, and you add a user for the HR admin, and you need to put them in the HR group, because that means now that you have these groups set up, you can just stick someone into these groups, and that'll take care of the rest of their permissions and things, which is really nice. You can use that to manage large groups of people. If you look at, I'm not in any groups, so it's not showing me any groups. But I think to add a group, I want to say it's group add. Again, I haven't done a lot of this stuff in a long time, because I don't need to do much Linux administration anymore. But I think it's a group add, and let's say we're gonna add the mastermind group. Sudo. I'm gonna forget that every time. Cool. And so that's gonna give me my group. So there's also a file that I can look at. So I'm gonna clear this, and I can cat /etc groups, or group, yeah, group. And this shows me the groups that I have available to me. So I just created the group here. As every user gets created, it also creates a group for them as well. I forgot about that. We'll talk about why that is in a second, because we're about to learn about permissions. But yeah, I created this group called Mastermind. And so I'm gonna add the command line user and the GUI user to the mastermind group. So I think the command to do this, you can add as many groups as you want. Again, so I have this group. I think I can do user mod. I think it might be user add -a, which I think stands for amend, and -g, which stands for add them to group. And then I think it's the user, and then the user, which is GUI, and the group. I think this is right. This might be wrong, but let's see. User. Okay, so I think I had it backwards. So I think it's mastermind GUI. Cool. So it's user mod -a for kind of amending them to that, or append, -g, which stands for group. So we're appending to a group, and we're adding the GUI user. We're adding the GUI user to the mastermind group. I think this should work. Oh man, struggling with the sudo. All right. So whenever you type in a command and it takes you straight back to the command prompt with no output, it's usually a successful sign. It's usually a good sign that what you wanted to happen happened. And so what we can do is we can cat /etc password again to look at our users. And now we can see that I thought it would show us there. It'll show us in here that by that group. So maybe it did not add. Let's get /etc groups. Maybe it's in the groups too, but I thought it was in there too. So cool. So in here, in the groups file, it shows us the mastermind group now has the user GUI in it and the user command line. I could also throw myself in there, so I could also throw the Abrooks user in there as well. And if I look at it now, I've got users in the mastermind group, and this will make sense once we throw in permissions shortly. I could basically give the mastermind group permissions to do certain things, and now all of these users would instantly have access to do these things, which again makes administration of a lot of people pretty easy to do. I really thought you could see really thought it would show you the users and groups here as well, but no biggie. You can find that in the groups page. There's probably other ways. Again, I haven't messed with some of that stuff in so long. Nowadays you honestly probably won't be managing users directly in the Linux system, but you may have to. You may be installing a new piece of software that makes you install a new user to run off of, or things like that. So it is very important to know how to do these things. Cool. System 76 laptops, absolutely, they're great. I'm going to show you guys mine one day. It is a pretty great laptop. Let's see, what distro is this? This is, again, Pop! OS. It's pretty heavily customized. If you want to, so I'm actually using the Hyper terminal, which is actually a JavaScript terminal. If you type in, what is it, ! terminal settings, it'll give you my settings. I'll show you guys one day how to actually how to apply those settings. But yeah, I think if you do, yeah, it'll give you a link to my config file. I think it's updated. If not, I can update it to the latest one. But yeah, I'm using Pop! OS as my distro, and again, it's not super heavily customized. Only thing I did was move the bar down here so it's kind of Mac-like, and then my terminal is pretty heavily modified. I had a lot of other modifications, but I took them away because they were actually pretty distracting. I had some stuff where it would like throw like sparks every time I typed. It would like throw sparks everywhere all over the screen. It's stupid, dumb thing, but sometimes it made my day a little fun. I can add that in one day to kind of show you how that works, but it's stupid, it's dumb, it's not good for productivity, and very distracting for you. Cool, so we've got that group now. We got those groups, and actually, someone should be grep mastermind. Oh yeah, so yeah, I can do grep mastermind / Etsy group, and that'll just show you that'll give you the exact line, so we don't need to look at the whole Etsy group. So grep, there's a little bit of foreshadowing. Grep is a great tool that you'll use a lot. Grep is a string search. So we learned about strings. Remember, strings, those are things with the quotes. That is a list of characters, think sentences and words. Grep allows you to search a file, allows you to search directories for a string, and it'll give you back everything that matches. So it's just like the find. If you do a Control F in the browser and you're looking for something on a web page and you want to find it, it's just like that, and that's how you do it from the command line. So you'll probably see me do stuff like that a whole lot. Yes, I have tried OZSH or OMyZSH. I think I removed it from my Windows one day. I had it installed for a while. The reason I don't use ZSH is because getting comfortable with the ZSH shell as opposed to Bash, when you're working with systems are always only going to have Bash installed, like almost exclusively. 99.99% of the times a system is going to have Bash installed, and I've seen people get tripped up getting comfortable with ZSH, and not having their tools and commands available to them when they log into a system, and have been a little confused about what to do. I don't want to put myself in that predicament, even though there's not a lot of times now where me personally, where I'm logging into systems and making changes or doing things, so probably wouldn't affect me as much. But that is the reason why I kind of stick with Bash and don't go with ZSH. But I think it's going to be the new default shell on Macs. So it's a great shell. It has a lot of great features, tons of great features, definitely some cool stuff. But again, some of those features won't be available to you when you do log into a server or to a system, and that's why I won't make the switch, to be 100% honest. Cool. All right, what was after that? So we went through. Let's go back to Academy, Mastermind.io, and I think we're going to go into permissions. This is the cool one. I like teaching permissions. I like people as I can see them start to understand permissions. I think it's pretty great. So then we have just enough time to get through this. So I'm actually going to I'm going to Google it really quick just to see if I can find a good infographic. Well, let me show you this really quick. So, all right, everything you see here, actually, let's clear this. Let's full screen it. Let's actually make everything a little bit bigger. Let's size it right now. let's make this a nice 22. Make everything a little big. All right, I do an ls-l here. Okay, when I do this, it lists a bunch of this -l that I'm putting here. It stands for long list. So it gives me this all of my files. So if I do an ls, it gives me all of my files with no extra information. The -l gives me extra information about what I'm looking at. And so it can be overwhelming at first if you don't know what all this is. But again, usually you're just looking at the stuff over on the right. But now we're going to learn about Linux permissions. And so permissions are very, very, very important in Linux, like very important. And it may take you a little bit to get comfortable with this, but Linux permissions are actually quite simple. I don't know if anyone's ever worked with Windows permissions, but those can get pretty complicated, for me at least. But Linux permissions, on the other hand, are very simple for me. And their permissions are set over here. So everything you see over to the left, before these numbers, all the RWXs, that's all the permissions. So everything to the left of this line is how you read Linux permissions and how you find out permissions for Linux files. The breakdown of it is, I know it's hard to see there. There are actually 3 sets of 3 lines. So the first column that you see all the way on the left, where you see the D, it's always going to be a D. 99.9% of the time, it's always going to be a D or a little line. This is just denotes whether or not it's a directory. So all the ones that you see that are Ds are directories, and my terminal is set up to show you that via color as well, via color and bold. So everything that's blue and bold is a directory. Everything that's not, everything that's not is a file. So all these are files, and you can see here those match up with what's over here. And the D, you know, it's for directory, and it denotes directory. So you can really throw that out. Look, honestly, to learn what we're about to learn, I will probably throw that out and only focus on these three. I think I called octets here, but yeah, there are 3 things here. So you can see here it's RWX, R-X, R-X. So again, 3 sets of 3 lines, 9 items, 3 sets of 3 lines. They all stand for a different thing. R stand for read. So read means that a file can be read, a file or directory. That means the user or the group that has an R means that it can read that file. If it has a W, that means it can write to that file. So that means it can modify it. So read means, hey, I can look at this file, but I can't make any changes. If it has write, that means I can take a look at the file and I can write to it. Maybe I can't look at it, but I can write to it, and I can overwrite it. I can make changes to that file, make modifications. And X stands for execute. So that means if it's a program or it's a script or something, I can execute that file. I have permissions to make that file be able to run. And those are the 3 permissions that you have inside of Linux: read, write, execute. And that is repeated 3 times in a row here. Read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute. And those stand, and there are 3 of them because those are for different people or different users. So the first three that you see here are the permissions for the user. And so the user of this file, so the user of this directory, or whoever is assigned as the user of this directory or file, has these 3 permissions. So whatever's in these first 3 things will denote what permissions it has. So this person, whoever's the user, has read, write, and execute. The second 3 are for the group. So the group, whatever group owns this file, will have these permissions. So they'll be able to read, they won't be able to write, but they will be able to execute. So whenever you see a dash, that means they don't have that permission. So they can read it, they can't write to it, but they can execute it. And then the last 3 permissions are for everyone else. So if you're not the owner, if you're not a part of the group, and you're just part of the rest of the world, these are your permissions. And so again, they have the same permissions as the group. So they can read, they can not write, but they can execute. And so that's what you have here. How do you know who the user and the group is? And you can do that by these next 2 things. So all these say A Brooks because I created all these files. And we saw that when we created a user, that it set the user and the group. It sets you automatically, sets the user and the group, but I can change the group. Hey Brooks, I created the group mastermind, and I can give the functions.go file. Oh man, to-do. Now, this is the user who owns it is the first one always, and the group who owns it is the second one always. And that is how you know who the user and the group assigned to a file are. And then these things change accordingly. Now, we have 6 minutes, quick infographic on this. So Linux permissions. We can talk about how you set the permissions and change the permissions. Let's see if I can find a good image. If not, I'll send the image. We'll go with this. This looks good enough, I guess. Plus. Okay, so these all have a number value, and actually this is kind of complicated looking. But these letters all have a number value. R has a 4-point number value. A W has a 2-point number value, and an X has a 1-point number value. They're numbered that way so that no matter what combination you get out of those three, will always give you a different number. So if you have all three, if you have read, write, and execute, you add them all up. So you have 4 plus 2 plus 1, which is 7. So 7 means that that all of these are basically lit up. Someone has access to all of these things. So if you only had 2 of them, so again, the write is only worth 2 and the X is worth 1. So if you wanted both of those things to be active but not read, you would add those things together and you would now get 3. So if you did a 3, it would only show these 2 but not the first one. And if you wanted the read and the execute, we said read was worth 4 points. And let's go back to this. We said read was worth 4 points, and then execute was worth 1 point. So if you wanted this to be to have read and execute but not write, so if you wanted something to have the R and the X but not the W, it would be 4 plus 1, so it would be 5. So you can denote what you want a user's permissions to be, a group's permissions to be, and everyone else by numbers, by 3 numbers, each number representing one of those categories. So let's say if I wanted no one to be able to access this, I can do sudo chmod. If I did 0, 0, 0, and I did functions.go, and I looked at it again, you can see here how none of these are lit up anymore. None of them, because I gave them zeros. All the number value matters. So let's say I wanted just my user to be able to read it. Just my user to be able to read it. Nothing else, only read. We know that read, user is the first one. Read is worth 4 points. And all I wanted to do is that. So I know 4 points is the one to read. I can change this to 400. And now when we do an ls-l, we should see an R in the first part for the user. And when we do that, that's exactly what we see. We see now my user has access to read, but nobody else has anything else. So if we want to add read functionality for the group as well, the mastermind group as well, we can add another 4. And you can see here, it changes every time. And let's say now we want to give my user access to everything. We know that you just add these up. So everything is 4 plus 2 plus 1, so it's 7. And we can give it 7 for me. Let's say we only want the group to have everything as well, and we want the rest of the world to only be able to execute. Really weird that you want to do that, but what is execute? Let's reference this. Execute is 1, and if we do this, that means we should have all the lights filled for the first 6, and then the last one should only have execute set up, and that's exactly what happens here. And so yeah, so Linux permissions are really important, actually quite simple once you take a little bit of time and like remember what the numbers are, remember what the difference between read, write, and execute is, and remember that you can denote these and check permissions very quickly with just the number, just those numbers. So, you know, for security reasons, you always hear people say like, "Oh no, make sure." Like, so like if you're ever looking at how to do something following a guide and they say, hey, set something to 777, you'll know that's wrong. You'll know that you shouldn't do that, because that means everyone has access to it. It's really insecure. And even when you do something at 777, it changes the entire color of it to let you know that, like, oh, this is a weird thing that you're doing. Like, it's kind of open for everyone to use. It kind of highlights it and lets you know what's going on there. So definitely take a look at some Linux permissions. I promise you tonight, I'm going to post the resources for Linux permissions, particularly in the Slack channel. So join the Slack channel. I'm going to post those in there, run through those, since we didn't get a lot of time to be able to do that. Last thing, it's already 10 o'clock. Last thing I want to go through is, I think we're supposed to be going over how to edit text, text manipulation. So, when you have a GUI, you can open up, Visual Studio Code, and you can modify files. But when you get dropped into a terminal like this, how do you modify text? So this fizzbuzz.go and this functions.go are two different files, and you can use a couple of different things. So one tool that you can use is called Nano. The problem with Nano is it's not always available on a system. The one text editor you're pretty much guaranteed to have is VI, which is the hardest one to use. We're going to go over that next. But Nano is one that's usually on there, and you can go. Usually, you just call the tool that you want to use, and then the name of the file. So if I want to edit fizzbuzz, I can nano fizzbuzz.go, and I can go in and I can type in whatever I want here. I can make my changes, and I can say hello, and then I can save it. And so it gives you some options down here, and it tells you what to do because you're in the command line, and you can just hit Control X to exit. It says, hey, it's been saved. Do you want to save it? And you just hit Y to save it. It asks you the file name, so you can change the name of the file if you'd like. But here you can just hit enter, and that saves my file. So again, we use the cat command to spit out the contents of a file to the screen. And if I cat fizzbuzz.go, you can see here that the change that I made still exists because I saved that file. Now, the big one, the one that you should all learn, but has the highest learning curve, it's a great tool, but it has the highest learning curve, is VI. VI will be available to you on pretty much any system by default, and it'll drop you into this. It's a modal editor, which means there are modes, and it's a little complicated to use. But most people use Vim, which is VI improved. And actually, when I typed in VI, it automatically sends me to VI improved because it's better. So you can type in VI or VIM, and that will take you into the text editor. And because it's modal, you have to give it some commands to get out of it. So one of the most searched things on the internet about coding, about text editing, is how the heck do I escape Vim? Like, how do I get out of it? It's very hard to close if you don't know what you're doing. And to do that, you just hit a colon and Q if you haven't made any changes, and it will let you out. But we can do the same thing. We can edit this file again. We can do Vim and then the name of the file. So let's do Vim fizzbuzz.go, and it opens it up right here for me, and I can edit. So first things first, if I go in and I start trying to type, nothing happens. I just typed a W and a B, and it's just doing a bunch of stuff. That's the first thing that's confusing about VI and Vim. Again, it's modal. We're in normal mode, so nothing's gonna happen. It tells me we're in normal mode down here. To get into editing mode, you have to go hit the I key, which puts you in the insert mode. And you can see it changed the mode. It changed the color. It changed what we're doing. We're in insert mode. Now we can go through and we can edit. And now if I'm done, I can hit escape. It takes me back to normal mode. If I hit colon, it takes me into command mode. And let's say I want to switch to line number 5. I can hit 5 and it takes me to line number 5. And you can see how that makes it fast. Or let's say I want to search for the word fizz, and I want to see where it is in the file. And if I type in that, if I pass in that command, it takes me to the first instance of fizz. And I can hit N, and you can see that the cursor moved down, and I can hit N again, and it takes me back. But it has a lot of cool features. But again, the learning curve is very high. It takes a while to figure out. Like, there's a lot of shortcuts. I can delete this line. Actually, if I undo, I hit a U to undo, and if I want to delete this whole line, I can hit DD, and that deletes the line. But to get out of this, you have to do colon. To save a file, I'm in command mode. I've hit W. This is like I'm so used to it now, it doesn't seem crazy, but like when I'm going back over this, it seems really wild to have to do. But to save it, you have to pass in a W, which is for write, and it'll save. This is giving me some errors about my Go packages. I need to fix up some stuff, but it did save. Lets me know it was written. But to get out, you do colon. If you want to save, you WQ, and that is how you get out of them. That's how you save and you quit. If I didn't want to make any changes, I could just do Q exclamation point if I want to make sure no changes were saved, or Q if I didn't make any changes. I already saved my changes, and now I'm out. So I'll send you some information on Nano. I'll send you some information on Vim and VI. You will need to know how to use those things to be able to edit text via the command line. That is like the main thing you'll probably be doing when you log into servers is moving around, moving files, and editing text. Yeah, so that's all we have for tonight. It's 5 minutes over. Hopefully you got a little bit out of that. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. Hopefully you were able to at least get set up on one of those services, whether it be Linode or DigitalOcean or AWS Lightsail. Hopefully you were able to understand how we created users and deleted users from the command line. Pretty simple process. User add, user delete. Don't be afraid. You do not need to memorize the commands that I ran. You can absolutely Google how do you add users in Linux. Very simple. You do not need to memorize those things. You will get it over time. Google it. You saw me do it. Because you saw me do it, it'll be a lot easier to apply it when you do it. So Google, hey, how do I add a user in Ubuntu? How do I add a user in Red Hat? Go ahead and try adding some users, deleting some users, changing their passwords, adding groups, deleting them from groups. Make sure you get comfortable with moving around. So just practice, changing into directories, and you're moving back and moving forward. Maybe you can learn how to make a new directory. I did do it during the stream, but I didn't teach it. But maybe you can make your own directory. Maybe you can delete that directory. So try those things at practice. You have that VM. Don't be afraid to mess things up. Click around, practice some things. I do have a cheat sheet I'm going to give you with some simple Linux commands. I was going to pass it out. I was going to send it out beforehand, but I didn't want you guys looking at all the extra. There's like a lot of stuff on there. I'm going to tell you to only look at the top 10 commands. Maybe get comfortable with those top 10 commands on there and be able to run through those, get comfortable with those. It takes a long time to get fluid at this stuff. Again, focus on the concepts. You don't need to memorize the commands. Just know that everything that you can do from the GUI, you can do from the command line. And once you're equipped with that information, you can use Google to find out the information that you need. Once you know that you can do that stuff, you can figure out what to Google to find out how to do it from the command line. Again, very simple. How do I create a user from the command line? How do I move to, how do I get to my documents? What is my home directory in from the command line? How do I find out where I am currently located in the command line? So you can use that Pwd command. But again, high level concepts. Understanding what tools you have available to you and what you can do with them is more important than memorizing what cat does or what nano or vim is. Again, just know it's more important to know that you can edit text from the command line. Yeah, that went a little longer than I thought, but again, hopefully the last little bit didn't feel too rushed. I'll make up for that by getting you information. I'm also going to start doing some supplementary classes on Saturday mornings. I haven't figured out the time yet. I'll probably let you know the time on Wednesday, but it might not work out too well for the people on the West Coast because we're going to try to get it done pretty early. I'm probably going to do it around 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 or 11, and knock out an hour or two of just questions, running through some examples of things that we didn't get through during the week, that we just want to expand further on. If you have any genuine questions, things that you just really were confused about and you went around and you Googled and couldn't figure some things out, hop on, ask those questions. If viewership is pretty low, then I'll probably just play some games until people have questions, just to have some fun, just to blow off some steam. But I will provide those almost be like office hours to check out. So Saturday mornings, probably around 10 or 11 a.m. Eastern time. So again, sorry for the West Coast folks, but my Saturday evenings tend to be taken up a little bit. Maybe I'll find a way to get somebody on the West Coast to kind of hop on and answer some questions for people as well. But yeah, that's it for this week. Hopefully we got through some stuff there. I saw someone shout out Vim Adventures. Vim Adventures are great. It's kind of a game that'll teach you how to use Vim. It's pretty cool. Vim is confusing at first, very confusing at first. It's okay. It is very okay. Just start to get the basics. Learn the very basics of Vim first. Learn how to go into a file, learn how to get it into edit mode and edit that file, and then learn how to close and save, to save and close it. That's all you need to start out with. And then you can build on your Vim foo from there. You can build on your Vim skills after that. But yeah, Vim is a text editor you can write anything with. I prefer Vim, honestly, to a lot of things. Again, because I'm used to being in systems. Vim is just nice for me to do things in, because there's a lot of shortcuts, because everything's like a shortcut. Once you get good at it, you become, I don't know, once you get good at it, you can do things a lot faster. So you can use it minus setup like a full text editor. So, man, my key bindings might not work for my, okay, cool. So yeah, so here you can see here how my Vim is a lot like VS Code, and I can open it up here, and I can actually click into Vim, and usually can't, but I can split this, and now I have split stuff. So Vim's pretty cool. Takes a little time to get set up, but if you copy my Vim settings that are in my GitHub, you can kind of get set up like this as well. But it's a cool text editor. It's not a requirement to know, but it is a requirement to figure out how to edit stuff and be able to save and exit, because you will have to do that. We did the Saturday sessions. Will you post it on Slack? Absolutely. I will absolutely post it on Slack. I'll try to actually set up some what are those things called? I'll probably post that video. I probably won't play a lot of music or anything. I'll probably immediately post those sessions so people can kind of go back and watch over those, and I'll try to put out a little transcript of the actual questions that were asked and answered to save people some time. I don't want you to have to spend time watching an hour or 2 hour video trying to get some answers. I'll try to synthesize all that stuff by Sunday and have all that stuff available to consume for the week. Yeah, we can actually, on one of those Saturday sessions, on the Saturday session, we can actually go through and I'll show you guys how to apply those Vim settings if you want them. But again, look out. Look out for those resources in the Slack. Please join the Slack. Tonight's the night where you're going to get all the resources tonight. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Make sure you guys have those resources. I already have the resources. It's going to be pretty easy just to stick them in there. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a resources channel. I'm going to add everyone to it. I'm going to create a pinned post that just has a running list of the class. It'll have basically just like the class date, and what the class topic was, and it'll have all the resources for that class underneath, so that you don't have to go searching through that channel for those resources. Everything will be right there. I'm also going to post them in the GitHub and some instructions on how to grab those for people who are familiar with GitHub. The notes those resources will always also be there, but they'll be in both places and easily accessible. That is what I'm going to be working on tonight. But cool, thank you for another great class. You guys have been excellent. I really love the interaction, helping each other out. The next class is going to be some more in-depth Linux stuff. Because we don't have to do any installation, we'll hop straight into it and we'll learn some more, core Linux commands. Again, making directories, and we'll learn how to like manage the system. We'll learn how to see how much CPU we're using and memory and all that stuff. We'll learn how to do so many different things next time. And this will be more of the systems administration tasks that you might do day to day. We'll learn how to install packages, and start installing tools and start learning how to use tools, and we'll just get really comfortable with the command line. And we'll be using we'll be getting comfortable with the command line throughout the entirety of the rest of the course. So we're doing a lot here. Don't worry about getting all your command line skills in these next 2 classes. We'll be doing command line stuff the whole time, and you'll start to see the core commands that you need to get kind of up to speed on, and you'll learn a lot of it by osmosis, so no big deal there. But yeah, see you all on Wednesday. This was Monday. Yeah, we'll see you all on Wednesday for part 2 of the Linux live stream. Don't forget, Labor Day is we're doing that lab. So if you can make it, great. I assume a lot of people won't be on Labor Day, but if you can make it, we're gonna be doing some bash scripting, and we're gonna do some cool stuff with the Linux stuff that we learned tonight and tomorrow. But thank you all. I will see you all next time. Have a good night.